Welcome back, my subscribers. In this video, I want to talk about the Sirui Aurora 85 1.4. So the market's full of 85s, just as any other focal length, but I have to say, Sirui has come a long way. At first, a lot of their lenses were manually focusing, but now we've slowly been getting more and more autofocus lenses, and now we have this. So now, as part of the L-Mount Alliance, which is clearly labeled on their box, you can now have another 85 option, separate from the Lumix, separate from the Sigma, and if you're using a different mount, separate from the G Masters or the standard G lenses or Zeiss. There's just a variety now that this is available in multiple mounts. I'm focusing on this lens, but I was using it on L-Mount. So in this video, you'll see a lot of samples where I use this lens, using it on the SL2S as well as on the S1R2. And I wanted to give you my impressions. So right out of the box, I've only used Sirui's APS-C autofocus lenses, and those felt pretty good, but they do feel a little bit plasticky. So I was wondering how this was going to turn out. I wanted to see now, how does it feel in the hand? So taking it out of the box, I was surprised that it is full metal and it feels solidly built, but it's not too heavy compared to other 85s or other lenses. And for being an 85 1.4, I think the size is pretty manageable. It's got some neat markings. I do like how they put their logo in blue. But I think it's an average sized 85 for being a 1.4. I think it's pretty compact. It doesn't feel too heavy, but it still feels solid. So you still have that metal build. You've got the weather sealing at the mount and other points in the lens. And for being, I don't know if it's their first L-mount autofocus, separate from the anamorphic ones, but it has all the things you would expect out of a lens, like the clicking on and off for the aperture ring, a focus hold button, on and off autofocus or manual focus. One of the things I did like about it is that it's a 67. There's a lot of lenses now that are 67mm, so it makes it easy to just buy your filters once and swap them with multiple lenses. I think I have a handful that are 67, so that was a nice feature there, decision to make it, but it also speaks to how compact this lens is, being 67mm versus other 85s at 1.4 being around 72, 77, depending on the manufacturer. The lens hood is plastic, but I would say it's solid plastic. Once it's secured onto the lens, it feels very solid. So I wouldn't ding Sirui for any points for making this plastic feeling. It has a grip texture on it, which is nice for removing and adding the hood on there. You're not going to really manually focus with this lens, but if you wanted to, I mean, they're all coming with the focus ring. It's very loose, so I would imagine if you are trying to manually focus, it's kind of going to go all over the place because it's so light to move. The aperture ring feels pretty clicky, so I do like that. And sometimes I prefer to keep it controlled there. Sometimes I just put it in auto and do it in camera, just depending on what I'm doing in the day. So in the image samples, you'll see I've just shot everyday stuff going out. You'll see all kinds of subjects. I took it to the museum. I went outside, took some flower shots. Just an everyday photography approach on this lens. I have not used it for video, but that would be my next phase of checking out how this lens works. Because an 85 is a special focal length. I do love the everyday normal vision, so to say, focal lengths like 35 to 50, but an 85 really makes subject pop. I like to think of an 85 as when you're looking at something, the focus of what you're looking at, that's an 85. When you're looking at it as a whole, it's more like a 40. But 85 really pinpoints that focus, that point of attention. So it allows you to pick a subject and make it stand out. And because of the compression gives you an opportunity to do all kinds of things with foreground and background, make things pop that wouldn't otherwise pop as much. So I think an 85 is a nice focal length to not go too telephoto, but also not be too wide and get this isolation of the subject while bringing out great bokeh. I would say I'm using this most of the time at 1.4, unless, I mean, I'm getting really close to something where my minimum focus distance will just make too much of it blurry. But most of the time, medium to far, at 1.4, this lens is really making almost anything that you take a picture of pop. And I did notice there is flaring when the sun hits it directly. So if you are shooting in that situation, do use the lens hood. But I opted with not using it just to reduce the size, because when you see the length of the hood, it's almost half of the lens adding on to the front. So I kind of opted for not having the hood, and much more compact. And I didn't face a lot of situations where the sun was making unwanted flares or making the image kind of wash out. I think they did a good job with balancing how the lens reacts to bright sunlight or bright light sources, and keeping the image still sharp. And I would say it's most of the lenses that I'm lately a fan of. Most of the lenses that I'm a fan of lately are not too sharp, but they're also not soft. So it's somewhere in between. And I'm happy to see that a lot of manufacturers are opting to do that versus the super clinical approach. This one, I would say, is still in the middle, but it's good enough to, even if you cropped, you see that the image is very crisp. So I think they did a great job keeping this in a small form factor, keeping it at 1.4. And I would say it does give me a look that I like more than the Sigma 1.4 DGDN that I've used in the past. That one I had twice because I wasn't sure if I had made a mistake the first time, but having it the second time, I knew for sure that I think it was a little bit too sharp. And this one kind of gives me a little bit more character. I'm noticing the bokeh looks a little more cinematic, or the color that's coming in the scene, the color that's coming through to the camera looks a little bit more cinematic look to me. It may just be perception because it's newer lens, but I think when I'm editing on Lightroom, I'm noticing that the images look very, very smooth, very clean, but they don't look too modern, which is something I like right now. So I hope you enjoyed the sample images. There's tons in there. I will be back later to see how I can use this for video, as I'm still getting used to how this autofocus works on the S1R2. Trying to see the video settings, what works, what doesn't. With something like an 85, you definitely want to avoid subject jumping, because it's going to be a lot more noticeable when you're compressed. So that's something that will come later. So check out the samples, let me know what you think. Or if you have experience with this lens, go ahead and let me know if you think it's better or worse than using a Sigma, using the Lumix 85-1.8, which I also got to use. I think the 85-1.8 was a little bit just plain, so that one didn't stand out a lot to me. And I think it was similar in size to this one, and this is a 1.4. So that's a win for Sirui and their new autofocusing lenses that are now going to 1.4. So I'm excited to see what else they're going to come up with their cinematic styled imaging in mind. Thanks for watching.